You're listening to the 3 Pixels Tech Gaming and Movie Podcast. Bonus episode, Movie First Impressions, presented and edited by Allan Taylor.
Hey everybody, welcome back to a brand new special edition of First Impressions. The reason it's such a special edition this week is because we are joined by 3 Pixels' very own executive producer, Chris Huskins. Hey Chris, how are you doing?
I'm great, thanks. Thanks for having me on your show.
No problem, it's great to have you here.
I'm really excited. Obviously, to give a bit of backstory, we got given some screening tickets to go and see this movie, but you guys couldn't go, right? You just got busy diaries, I get it. So I got to go in instead, and that's why I'm excited.
And we're so excited to have you on the podcast this week because you're going to be talking to us about Ready Player One, Steven Spielberg's sci-fi action-adventure epic based on the 2011 book of the same name. And just before we get into hearing your first thoughts and your first impressions of Ready Player One, just set us up. What is the movie about?
Yeah, so, I saw someone say that this is Steven Spielberg's sort of real smash into the 21st century, and I definitely agree. So the film is Ready Player One, and it is based around a guy that creates a VR immersive world called The Oasis. And it's set in 2045 in the US, and everything has changed. So everyone lives for being in this virtual reality world, which kind of has this kind of Black Mirror feel that actually it could go that way, right? So it's set like this, and people are living in shanty towns because it's all about what's in the Oasis, in this VR world. And James Halliday created this, and with his death, he releases a video to everyone that's in the Oasis or uses the Oasis to say that he has hidden 3 keys that lead to an Easter egg within the game. And the person that finds these 3 keys and then the Easter egg, passing the tests, almost in a Charlie the Chocolate Factory-esque
I was thinking that.
Task thing, basically wins the rights to the Oasis. They will win it, they will run the whole thing, and they will get his entire load of money, which I think is something like $1 trillion in the film. So it's based around, and it starts with a young teenager who is that kind of age-old story of he's lost his parents, he's living with his auntie, and he is really into this VR game and chasing the whole James Halliday Easter egg thing against some rather awful sort of corporate people, whereas a company who were second in the world of making VR games have just hired huge armies of gamers to try and win the Easter egg so that they can take over the entire industry.
That sounds really interesting, actually. I haven't read the book personally, so I think that's worth mentioning. All I've had to go on so far are the trailers, so let's cut to the trailer and have a listen.
This is the Oasis. It's a place where the limits of reality are your own imagination. People come to the Oasis for all the things they can do, but they stay because of all the things they can be. I'm here talking to all of you now because our future's being threatened. In the Oasis,
I found something much bigger than myself. I found my friends. I found love. Ask yourselves, are you willing to fight?
So Chris, the name of the game is First Impressions. What did you think as you walked out of the cinema?
I genuinely loved this, and I wasn't sure whether I would or not. So I wanted to read the book before I got there, but the screening sort of caught up with me. So I listened to about 20 minutes of the audiobook, so I had no idea what I was going into, but I had no idea how well it was going to be done. And I think there are a couple of reasons for that. One is that it was really refreshing to go into something knowing it wasn't going to be set up for like a 10-movie saga or a trilogy, which seems to be all the rage now.
And it is really nice sometimes to know you're watching a complete product because you're getting the whole book. You are getting just this one book. It's not being split up into 3 movies like The Hobbit. You are just getting this one product. You're getting a complete story from beginning to end.
Yeah, and that kind of, I've got nothing against some of those films. I still love the Marvel films and all that kind of thing, but I knew that I was going to get a complete story here, so that was really satisfying in the first half. But the film really appealed to me because I've played games for a long, long time. I've been a gamer for 20 years, and the amount of references throughout the film on games is incredible. you can be any avatar in this VR world. And so people are choosing to be Halo characters back from like Halo 1.
Yes, I saw that in the trailer.
There's, in the final trailer, it shows as well, so this isn't a spoiler, but the Iron Giant is a character within it. Just every character you can imagine is in there. And there are really tiny little references in there as well. So at one point, one of the characters just grabs a gun out of their inventory, and it's clearly like the gun from Gears of War.
Oh, yeah, the Lancer.
That's it, yeah. And it gets blown up straight away and explodes because of the chainsaw. And it just, those little references really made it great for me. That was my first impression. I just absolutely loved that about it.
So it's interesting you said that you felt like this had references for you and this was made for you, because watching the trailer and just listening to the trailer now, it felt like this movie has a lot of the trappings of young adult fiction.
Yeah.
We have these kids that are in a dystopian future. They are being set challenges to compete against this government or corporate tyranny, like you've seen in Hunger Games, Allegiant, and Maze Runner. And I really thought that the latest Maze Runner was going to be the final nail in this genre's coffin. But around the corner walks Oscar-winning, critically acclaimed Steven Spielberg with Ready Player One under his arm, and seems to have got everyone buzzed and has just breathed a breath of fresh air into this genre. So how has he differentiated it from those movies that seem to be dying out and just opened it up to a whole new demographic, which includes you?
I think because it's so close to something that we think could happen. And I think that it's not unbelievable. Like I say, I mentioned Black Mirror and the things that happen in there, and that is genuinely frightening and a bit dark and a quite adult themed in places, because you could actually see them happening. And we could almost see this happening. The VR headsets that are used in it, and they're not called VR, but the Oasis headsets are very similar to what we see in like the Google Daydream or the Sony headset and all those things. They look very similar.
Right.
And
so it does embrace the social commentary side of it as well.
Yes, and I think absolutely. That's a perfect way of saying it. It does embrace that social commentary that you get from those sorts of things. So that's made it adult. The references, I think, there's something in there for everyone, and I think you'd have to watch it 4 or 5 times to see every single reference. So the way that they've used all of them means that it's approachable to anyone along that sort of spectrum, and whether they've been gaming or not. The other thing as well that was fantastic is I went with my wife, and she's not a gamer. She's obviously seen me play games or put up with me playing games for the years we've been married. Yeah. But she's not a gamer, and she still loved it as well. So that was really quite interesting.
So you mentioned all the references that you noticed, and even just listening to the trailer and watching the trailer, you can just see that it's just seeping with nostalgia. Yeah. And I was wondering, how does Spielberg use the nostalgia? How does he implement it in a meaningful way in Ready Player One? Because I've seen so many movies that tries to trigger that nostalgia part of your brain, but it feels like the producers just have a checklist of things they think people will recognize. You've got the DeLorean, you've got the Iron Giant, you've got Velociraptors, whatever. But you seem to have really enjoyed the nostalgia part of this movie. How has Spielberg implemented it in a way that feels meaningful to the plot and to the characters?
I think he's learnt from films that have done it really well recently. Yeah. So there's Halliday, the guy that's in it and has put the Easter egg in, was obsessed with the 80s, for example. So it's almost like got that Guardians of the Galaxy feeling, that loads of the music is from the 80s. One of the weapons in it is a Rubik's Cube. And so he's learned from the brilliance of Guardians of the Galaxy, some of the stuff from sort of Deadpool, those sorts of movies, and I think he's really used that well. The way that it sort of ties into the characters is because, as I said before, it doesn't feel unrealistic because it's set in a game world. And so even to the point where the CGI seems amazing because they're not trying to make it look real, they're trying to make it look like games.
Is everything inside of Oasis CGI, or are the actors represented in there as well?
So they're CGI. So as soon as they go into the world, they become their avatar. There's a point where King Kong comes out.
Oh, nice.
But he's not trying to make it look like he's a gorilla in the real world. It's a CGI King Kong in a game world. So it doesn't it doesn't have that pressure, I think.
Yeah, and it can allow itself to be CG and embrace the qualities that would, in other movies, make that stand out poorly.
Yeah.
What would you say the split is between how much time we're spending in Oasis and how much we're seeing of the real world?
Oh, it's difficult to say. I'd say that it's probably at least 60%, pushing on 70% in Oasis,
Okay.
but it does cut to the real world, and there's some great scenes at the end, and I won't give it away.
Oh yeah, no, definitely not.
But that you're flicking to things that are happening in the real world because the evil company have decided that it's not just about the Oasis anymore. They're willing to do whatever's necessary. And so they're sort of attacking the real world people whilst the good guys, if you like, are trying to win the game in the Oasis because they know overall that'll win. And so you're getting a good cut between things that are happening to the main character, Wade, in his suit, sort of suspended on a running machine, being hit and knocked about, and that's representing you're seeing him get thrown around in the Oasis when he's just trying to do normal things.
Oh,
so you get this
okay.
really lovely cut between the two, and the two worlds merge in that way. Maybe if they're a small guy, they're an absolute giant in the Oasis, and vice versa, and they're not who they seem, which it is another sort of social commentary about the way that the internet is and gaming and stuff, and that has some hilarious consequences.
Obviously, it was based on the 2011 book, so there will be some constraints, but even just watching the trailer, even listening to the trailer, you could just feel it dripping with Spielberg's essence. I was wondering, do you think Spielberg was the right person to make this movie? Because from what you've said, it sounds like Oasis is his world. You can't talk about pop culture from the 70s, 80s and 90s without talking about Steven Spielberg.
Yes.
And I can see this being a nice introspective for him to look back at his career and think about his influence and impact on pop culture and cinema. But on the other hand, the movie is about kids using this world, using Oasis as escapism, and there does feel like there is this thread of social commentary that you mentioned before as well. And I'm expecting either an astounding yes or an astounding no. Either he's the perfect person to make this because this is his world, he knows it, this is about his impact. And then on the other hand, we could have had someone who will look critically at the way the consumer market is being targeted by nostalgia, the way we're using it to escape from reality. The book might not even delve into these themes, so I might be going in the complete wrong direction, but it does feel like this is a good opportunity to look at these sorts of aspects. And the thing with Steven Spielberg is he makes two very different types of movies. On one hand, we've got these charming, sensational action adventures. On the other hand, we do have these critical looks, with the most recent one. And I'm just trying to find out which Spielberg do we have here, or do we have a good combination of both?
Do you know what? It's a hard one to answer. I think he did an incredible job. So I think he was the right person to make it for exactly what they're going for. Whether or not I think it could have been done more for people our age in a darker way, then maybe that could have been incredible as well. But I haven't read the book. I'm only a little bit in, and that seems to have a bit of a fun edge to it. So I think that it had to have someone who wasn't going to make it really dark. I think that there's a point in the film where there's massive references and parts of one of the levels. If you don't want to hear this, you can switch it off for like 5 seconds. But one of the levels is from The Shining by Stanley Kubrick.
Oh, okay. So there are definitely references for an older audience.
Absolutely, yeah. And my wife said, well, I haven't seen it, so do I get these bits? And I was like, yeah, but it's still funny. And they do that really well. And I don't think anyone who isn't of the huge name that Spielberg is could have represented Kubrick's work in a way that you would sort of still respect it, find it funny, and it would fit into the film. So I think it's a big yes from me that he should do it. If you had asked me before, I would have been like, I'm not sure. But it is a spectacle, and it could have gone either way.
And yeah, who better to do a movie of spectacle and wonder than Spielberg, to be honest.
And sometimes I think you worry with him that it's going to be more about the spectacle than the story. But him pulling the story from a book that went down really well and ties into all these age groups, I think it really, really worked.
So best of both worlds, really, for this movie.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that people of all ages could go and see it. Obviously, I got all the references, but there were new references that I probably didn't get that younger audiences and younger gamers would probably have got better.
Yes. So, Chris, do you have any other final thoughts before we wrap up?
As soon as I sat down, as soon as it started, as soon as things started happening and all these little things kept relating to me, I absolutely loved it, and I'm so glad I went. So I would totally recommend. Alan, you have to go and see it. I'm sure you're a gamer, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm sure you're going to absolutely love it. But I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yes, but I'll have to wait until the 28th, unfortunately.
Definitely go and see it. And if you haven't and you enjoyed the sound of the trailer at the beginning of this, go and watch. I think there's 3 trailers out for it, and they will definitely excite you.
Yes, go watch those trailers now and let us know. Are you super excited for this movie, or are you scared that it's not going to live up to the books? The email is hello@the3pixels.com, and a massive thank you to Chris for coming in and chatting about Ready Player One with us.
It's my pleasure. Loved it.
Can't wait to have you on the show again.
Yeah, great. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, everyone, for listening, and goodbye.
You've been listening to the 3 Pixels podcast, a production by Alan Taylor, music provided by Epidemic Sound, and exec produced by Abrupt Audio. With that, thank you for listening. We'll see you next time. Good night.